for one reason or another, Flood is like a hugely popular album for them.
Well, I think it's for 3 reasons.
Well, okay, we'll talk about those reasons. Flood is an album that maybe more people have heard Flood and not heard the other albums.
Yes.
Than fans like us who just listen to everything that they do.
Right.
And beyond everything that they do. Everything that they've even touched.
Right.
You know, we'll just listen to like someone who knows someone who knows them.
Right, even tangential relations to them. We want to check out, get in that world.
Yeah. So for you Floodies, that's
Floodites.
That's like a slur against
Floodite. I like that, like Luddite.
Yeah. Well, I can go into this a little bit actually. So on the old news group back in the day, and I like to talk about the old news group because it's a huge part of my being a They Might Be Giants fan.
I like to listen.
Yeah. So Dave was never a big computer nerd.
No.
Around junior high and high school, I got really swept up in the They Might Be Giants news group, and I know a few people from there listen to the show and have emailed us.
Hey guys,
the term "floody" was really this like kind of derogatory slur against I guess what would be seen.
Oh, that's a real thing?
Yeah. I'm not
Ooh.
Dave, most of the things I say are real things. I'm sorry to break it to you.
That's the opposite of me. Go on.
Yeah. So it's kind of is like a term for someone who's like only knows Flood and
like a townie.
Yeah. And they might like post a post being like, do they have any other albums besides Flood? Or,
right,
you know,
sure,
or like,
sure.
or like they'll make a big faux pas like, I love their first album, Flood, you know.
Yeah.
But look, we're here to say we welcome you.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
Come into my bedroom.
Come in.
Where we are. I'll turn down the lights.
I don't listen.
This is getting a little, yeah.
I don't care if someone makes a mistake. Nobody's perfect. I mean, that's a dumb thing to say, but I wouldn't be like, get the fuck out of here.
If you're a fan of They Might Be Giants and you love Flood and you don't know much about their music, stick with us. We're going to steer you the right way. We will
they have other albums.
We'll definitely refer to their other songs. But also, I do want to say, if you like the band in general, but you're just hearing about this episode because it's a Flood episode, go back, listen to our other episodes. I think this is a good podcast, despite the first few minutes of this one. Yeah. And we are going to get into Flood.
But you know, Flood is a really good album, so it's okay that's what they like.
That's actually a huge point I wanted to make. So what happened, I would say maybe tail end of 89, is They Might Be Giants get signed to Elektra Records.
Elektra.
They had
the same record label as Metallica. Just saying.
Yeah. So Dave tracks Metallica's career parallel to as we're tracking They Might Be Giants' career on this show. It's kind of like a little sub-show in the show.
In my brain.
Yeah.
No one can see it. But if that shows you how big Elektra is, you know, we can put it in that context. Elektra's a huge fucking label. Mm-hmm. So this is a very important move.
Yeah. So they signed to Elektra because their first 2 albums, which are self-titled, it's called They Might Be Giants, and Lincoln, came out on Bar None, an indie label, but it's still, I don't really understand. I mean, to me, like, their first 2 albums seem very successful in any context. I mean, they had videos on MTV. I guess, like, when you just get more successful, that stuff seems like small potatoes. But to me, I'm like, hey, I'll take an indie label that puts me on MTV and,
at this point,
and on
any
college
label.
Stations. Yeah, that's true.
Those labels are no more.
They signed to Elektra, and the thing is, when a band signs to a major label and does the big worldwide tours and all that, there is a fear, is this going to be the same band anymore? Is the fame and the fortune and the ladies and the drugs going to go to their heads? And
it did.
And it did. And we're here to condemn John and John because we think they stayed the same humble, wonderful guys, I think.
How do you feel about being part of Elektra Records, being part of a big major label now? Has it changed anything for you? Has it made anything different in your life?
We feel soiled. It's really okay. We're dirty all over. No, it's
well, maybe
really
you got some money
fun.
in your pocket now, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were doing we've been doing pretty well for the past couple of years, and just in terms of making money from shows and stuff like that. So, I think we were pretty lucky in that we weren't a new band being signed, so we didn't have to go through the whole process of having record companies trying to reinvent us. They kind of wanted to sign us rather than sign our potential. So there was something very it was a known commodity, so I don't think anybody really wanted to mess with it.
They knew the package. They knew what they were buying.
They knew the mistake they were making.
Their shows didn't change much. I've been tracking their live shows too. And the songwriting, as you will know, on Flood is as, I mean, some say it's some of their best stuff. We can talk about that. But it's a lot of the songs are from when they were, as we've learned, they are from those same period as when they put out Lincoln. And it's just songs they hadn't gotten to yet or weren't fully fleshed out. And so there's clearly no change in the major label. The only difference, which I definitely want to ask Dave's opinions on, is like the production of the album.
Yeah.
Is definitely like, there's certain songs that are like huge productions.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's more money behind it, but there's still live. They're doing the backing tracks.
Follow the money, I'm saying.
And they're still a duo.
Yeah.
There wasn't, like you said, a huge difference. And I mean, even sonically, it's not like we've talked about on this show before. I still think the first album sound as good, as big budget as anything out there.
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of like changing reactions to this because I used to think all the albums just sound good.
Mm-hmm.
After really obsessing over Flood for the past few weeks for this episode, it's like I kind of do hear what they mean when they talk about being in this major studio.
Mm-hmm.
Did things change in terms of actually going into the studio and recording? Were you more free in terms of the time you could spend in the studio? Did you not have financial worries like you may have had in the past?
Well, we've always had enough money to record in the sense that we just sought out situations where we were free time-wise. We recorded at really inexpensive studios so we could have as much time to record as possible, as opposed to going into a really fancy studio for 2 minutes and getting it done really fast.
Right.
Which I think we realized would never work. So this time we went into a fancy studio and relaxed. So
we had about the same amount of anxiety. I think.
Yeah.
We expand to fill the available anxiety.
Let's talk about Flood, the album. It's
as a general concept.
Dave, what is an album?
Ooh, that's a toughie.
Is it about Al, that bum down the street who's always... let's just talk about some of the origins of Flood.
Yes.
Yeah, so Dave, what do you think about the name of the album, Flood? We're going to start with like the very beginning here. Yeah. What do you think of... So the last album is Lincoln.
One-word title. I love one-word titles for albums. It is true, goddammit.
Well, I should tell you we have this record coming out. It'll be out in January on the 15th. And we spent the past 5 years making it. It didn't just seem that way. The record's going to be called Flood. Think about that, Flood. That's the name of the record.
I think Flood is a great title for an album. Yeah. Because there's, like They Might Be Giants, many different interpretations of that. Like, could be a flood of good feelings and love, or it could be like a biblical flood. And actually, going through the songs, there did seem to be a little bit of a biblical implication in a lot of them. Did you get that?
I was definitely noticing there's some themes. They Might Be Giants always claim that these things are not intentional because they just have 1,000 songs. But I do think there's some subconscious, like when they're assembling an album. They've talked about this with a few albums.
It's weird because when you look for them, they're definitely there.
Yeah. I think they're trying to tell us to kill the the Pope.
Tell me why it's called Flood, because there is no song called Flood. But is it?
No.
Is it like is Flood the overflowing? I mean, there's a lot of songs. There's like almost 20 songs on this thing.
Natural, unstoppable.
Is that what it is? It's a primal force of nature? They might.
Yeah, it just seemed like kind of a good image. We have I don't know if you have a tape library of a lot of mixed bag things that you just kind of name because you have to give it a name. We make a lot of tapes with a lot of different songs on it, but instead of dating them or numbering them, we just give them names. And we named one thing Flood. And then so when we were trying to think of a name for a record, we just kind of looked at a tape called Flood and said, well, that'd be a good name for a record.
I love Flood as a title because it is an overwhelming album.
Yes.
And you really do
it's
feel...
a flood.
It's not just the quantity, but it's like how much they throw at you in such a short amount of time. So like the second half of Flood goes by really fast. You've probably noticed, like, because the first half is like all the singles that are like almost 3 minutes long.
No, there's a barrage of...
Then it's like a rapid fire, like a machine gun of like little song bullets, little sapphire song bullets hitting you. And it's just like, whoa. And I imagine to people who aren't fans of the band, but who love Flood, they're just like, I've never heard anything like this before. And it must be kind of strange.
Yeah.
I guess I should go back a bit. In our first episode, I brought this up, but our first episodes, you don't have to listen to it. So I'll bring it up again. The first, I will admit that I was a Floodie. I'm a former Floodie.
Yeah, that's big of you.
Yeah, thank you. I found an old dubbed cassette of Flood. It was handwritten, so it wasn't the true cassettes or CD or whatever. So I found it in my sister's bedroom, which I did talk about in the first episode. And
and I commented on inappropriately.
Yeah, and then I popped it into her stereo, and I was pretty taken instantly. I mean, love at first sight is not an exaggeration. To go more into detail, I wasn't a fan of any bands.
Yeah.
I only really listened to movie soundtracks and stuff, and I didn't really watch MTV or anything, or to the degree that I'd be like, I love this band, mommy. Yeah. It wasn't I like going to the toy store and buying stuff about pop culture, but not music was a blind spot. So putting in the Flood cassette was the first time where I was I got hooked into a musical artist that was creating content that was divorced from any pop cultural thing, like a Batman soundtrack. Or
do you think that's why they're your favorite band? Is because that's how you figure out what music is?
Yeah, it's really strange. They dug really deep into me. So now, for a while, it was just like any other band would just be compared to them.
You never forget your first love.
Yeah,
I think is what you're saying.
So I got more of a balanced diet of various kinds of bands and music. But for a really long time, it was They Might Be Giants was number one, and there wasn't really a number two for a while. Until maybe talking to other fans over the years and being oh, check out this other band like XTC, or bands again connected to them and in different ways. Dave, what's your origins with hearing Flood for the first time? What's the context? What were you wearing?
Well, as I talked about in that episode, also I think the first one, I can't really remember what my first album was, but it definitely wasn't Flood. Because I already had a few albums when Daniel and you went to the record store there, and I was should I buy Flood? Is that one of their good albums? As far as the indoctrination into their catalog, it must have been I'm sure Istanbul and Birdhouse and all those songs were there. So I probably knew those already. Maybe even Twistin' or a couple other ones. I just didn't know that they were on Flood.
I did know Particle Man and Istanbul from Tiny Toons, and we're going to get deep into that in a few songs.
We're going to get sexy with Tiny Toons.
We're going to...
I think it's going to get pretty erotic.
So I'm going to hold that for later. I think I'm going to hold that for the Particle Man discussion so that we have both in one there.
You do you.
But that was the motivation. Oh, I know the songs from this album.
And I was really struggling before we did the show to remember if I had seen them on Tiny Toons first also. And I'm sure I must have. It's
a vivid memory for me, is that episode of Tiny Toons, and instantly liking those songs, but not in a way where I would be like, hey, Mom, could we go to Sam Goody's and I could buy a They Might Be Giants album,